Hello everyone, I am Razorblade Mango, and I am here to review the new science fiction film Ender's Game, based on the very popular novel by Orson Scott Card. And let's get started. So, Ender's Game, I must admit, I had never even heard of Ender's Game until the trailer for the movie came out. And once it did, a lot of my friends were like, "Oh, Ender's Game! Oh my God, they're actually doing that! It looks so badass!" And I wanted to get on it too, so I borrowed the book from a friend and read it a week before the film came out. And I saw it last night because I really got nothing to do on Halloween, so what the hell. And I thought it was a really good book. It's depressing as hell and very emotionally hefty, but very good, very effective, with really good, very well handled moral dilemmas and storytelling and character development. I really liked it. So, but I didn't want to come into this movie with like really high expectations because it just something about the trailer just did not rub me the right way. I mean, it looked cool on a visual level, don't get me wrong, but there was just something about it that I was like, okay, it's not selling me on this yet, but let's see what it does. And I went to go see it last night with some friends, and I thought it sucked. I gotta be honest. I was really bummed walking out of that theater because even though my expectations, I didn't really have any expectations, it still managed to disappoint me because of the potential that's there for such a great movie that this could become. I know what they're doing. They're trying to make another. It's like this happens every year where you have a big budget film come out that's based on a book. It's trying to be like the next big adaptation, and it fails at being that, in my opinion. I mean, you got a lot of these movies coming out that try to do that. And sometimes you get the Harry Potters, and sometimes you get the Hunger Games, and then other times you get stuff like the Golden Compass and the Last Airbender. And now you have Ender's Game joins that list of movies that I do not think will become the quality franchises that these filmmakers want it to be. So let me get to the point. Let me talk about the plot for a second. The plot revolves around a kid named Andrew Wiggin, whose nickname is Ender. And he's born into an futuristic Earth where an alien race almost wiped out humanity. And thanks to the efforts of a war hero, we've kept the aliens, in place for a long time, but now they're starting to come back. So the military is recruiting children to pretty much break them and train them as emotionless soldiers. And you can see where a lot of the morality, the morality issue comes in. Where is it okay to break these kids? Are we really doing the right thing by taking these kids, destroying their childhoods, and making them into killing machines? And part of my problem with this movie, and I have a lot of problems with this movie, is that they do a good job at times of bringing that issue up, because that's a big part of the novel. They kind of talk about it like in passing, and it really doesn't, it doesn't have the emotional oomph that it should. But let's talk about the big problems with this movie. This movie, and I should have known, with a runtime of only an hour and 54 minutes, that this movie is way too short. They go through the events in this book way too quickly, especially the beginning, where they try to set up the relationship between Ender and his sister Valentine, and the relationship between Ender and Peter, the brother, the really fucked up, abusive brother. That both of those are handled really badly. Where in the case of Ender and Valentine, you almost never get they do not even seem like brother and sister at all. I never felt like this great bond between the two, and that's a huge part of this movie, and that fell completely flat. And I don't necessarily blame the actors for that. They worked with the best. They worked the best way they could with what they got. But man, this writing is weak, and it brushes over such an important part of Ender's psyche with the relationship between his siblings, where it comes back later in the movie, and you just don't care. It's like, who gives a shit? Because they never established that emotional bond between Ender and the audience. I almost never cared about what Ender was going through. I never cared about Valentine. And I especially didn't care about the relationship between Ender and Peter, which is such, again, a big part in the novel, should have been a big part in the movie. They have one short scene with Peter. That's it. One short scene. After that, he is gone. He is almost forgotten about, except, talked about in passing. Where Ender's development into this cold-blooded, soldier and bully, in a way, he sees Peter in himself. And for a movie that brushes over the relationship between Ender and Peter, that did not work at all. Did not make any fucking sense. It was just flat as could possibly be. And you've also got another problem with this movie, is that this movie assumes way too much that you have read the book. And the problem with that is that it doesn't do a good job of explaining this world, like, in a way to make it sound interesting. And they have a really interesting concept here, but they don't put the emotional effort into it, where it just comes off as flat and it's boring and you just don't care. Well, personally, I didn't care, and I've read the novel, and even I was confused at points about what the hell was going on, because they speed through everything so quickly that they never take time to fully develop these characters. They're just there. They might as well just be like cardboard cutouts in the background. And they bring up all these terms, and they bring up all this stuff. They never explain what it is to be iced. Where in the novel, when you're iced, you're literally, I think you're thrown out into space from battle school. And they mentioned that at one point here in the movie, and they never explain what it is. So, unless you've read Ender's Game, I think you're going to be really fucking confused during this movie. And again, all of the military training scenes were disappointing, because big part of this movie is the breaking of Ender himself, where Ender, you have to feel, I felt Ender's depression and isolation when I read the novel. I became depressed myself because of that. I never felt anything like that during this movie, where again, they brush over the breaking of Ender and how he's just so, he's so heartbroken by the fact that he can't be with his family, and especially talk to his sister. I didn't care. Never do that. And it feels like a lot in the movie was cut out, where this felt like it should have been like a 3-hour movie. And then whoever the company that made this, I think it's Summit, where they looked at this movie. It was like Gavin Hood, the director, wrote this 3-hour screenplay for the movie that had all the emotional weight and all the scenes that needed to be there, and the development with Valentine and Peter. And then Summit just went in and said, we can't have a 3-hour movie like this. Cut you got to take all this shit out. We don't care about the relationship between these characters. We got to have scenes with more effects. If it doesn't have an effect in it, cut it out. And it feels like a trailer for a longer movie. And I hope in the future we get some kind of 3-hour, I doubt it, we get some 3-hour director's cut where we actually see the development of Ender and Valentine and Peter and other characters. And another problem in this movie, there's way too much telling and not showing. And Ender narrates a lot throughout this movie. And a lot of what he narrates, I wanted to see. I wanted to see what he was going through, the pain he was going through. I wanted to feel the hours upon hours of classes and training and battle stuff that he had to go through to become this great leader. And we almost never see that. And I guess and I know Ender starts out, I think, as a 5 or 6-year-old in the book, and by the end, I think he's 10 or 11. And again, that's the problem with and I understand you cannot cast 5-year-olds in this movie. It just would not work. But again, the guy they got to play Ender seems way too old for this part. And the fact you don't see him really age, and I guess years are supposed to go by in this movie, I never got a sense of that. This movie could have told me that the events in this took place within a week, and I would have believed it. And Ender narrates. Ender says, days and months went on end, yada yada yada. Nothing. It didn't feel like a month. It didn't feel like years even. And what fucked with me the most is that there's a scene, and I don't want to give much away. There's a scene where Ender does in fact meet up with Valentine before the climax of the movie. And I guess years are supposed to go by until they haven't seen each other. And it's like, the first thing they do is have a philosophical conversation. It's like, not even a hi or anything. Not even like, hello brother, how you been doing? Not even a fucking hug. It's just, oh, let's talk about philosophy. What? Yeah. So emotionless. Just, I could not have given less of a shit about what was going on in this movie. It's so fucking boring. It's ironic that this movie goes by way too quickly, and yet it drags its fucking heels at points where there's a long stretch in the middle where I was I lost interest. I didn't even look at the screen. I just started my eyes just started wandering around the theater, just trying to keep myself from falling asleep. It just, man, some irony there. It goes by way too fast, and it just is boring as hell. And a lot of the child actors are terrible. These whoever they got to be people guys like Bean and Bonzo and Bernard, they are terrible actors. They are so bad. And it seemed like part of the filming of this film, is that they all just filmed reaction shots, really bad, cheap reaction shots to whatever Ender said or whatever was going on. Because you would have a moment where Ender would say something, or Graf would say something, and then you'd see a kid in the background with this really look on his face. It was hilarious. Especially Bernard. Whoever played Bernard, that guy that kid is one of the funniest faces out there, and I don't mean that in a good way. It was just such bad acting. And I think a part of the huge problem with this movie is Gavin Hood, because he directed and he wrote this movie. And if you remember Gavin Hood, he also did that terrible X-Men Origins Wolverine movie. And I don't blame that all on him, because Skip Woods is such a fucking shitty writer. But when I read that Gavin Hood wrote this movie and directed it, he's a bad screenwriter as well. And his directing of actors is just so, it's so emotionless and just so bland and flat. I just, man, I cannot stress how much I did not give a shit about anything going on in this movie. And that's the last thing I wanted to feel while watching it. And they also, though, they do this thing at the end where, they leave it open for a sequel, because, to be fair, they do that in the book as well. But in the book, it worked, because you could have it be a conclusion. They could have never written any more Ender's books, and that would have been a satisfying ending. But here, you don't get like a whoa moment at the end when the credits roll. And again, the ending, it just seems so rushed and just so underdeveloped. And that's not to say everything about this movie is bad and weak. There are some great things about this movie, mainly the special effects and the cinematography. This movie is stunning to look at. And if it wasn't such a crappy movie, I would want to go see this in IMAX to get like the biggest screen possible, because these effects are astonishing and the cinematography is so wonderful. I mean, even when I was bored watching this movie, I was wowed by the scenery, and whoever was like the art designers and the visual effects guys, big thumbs up from me to you guys. You guys did your part. And some of the acting is actually really good. I mean, Harrison Ford as Graf, he is great, where he really has that loving father mentor-like figure, but he's also like a stern, badass authority figure that is willing to sacrifice these kids for the greater good, and you can see it in his eyes. And I really appreciate that they got someone like Harrison Ford who's able to do dry comedy really well. And Haley Steinfeld, if you don't remember, she was the main girl in the Coen Brothers True Grit movie. And I think she was in the Romeo and Juliet movie that came out a couple weeks ago. She is great as well. This is a terrific young actress. And Haley Steinfeld, she's great. She plays Petra. You believe that she is a badass. You believe that she can hold her own against these macho, tough kids. And she, like, where the relationship between Ender and Valentine failed so miserably, the relationship between Ender and Petra actually felt genuine because mainly of Haley Steinfeld's, great performance. And this guy named Nonso Anazi, I'm sorry if I mispronounced it, who plays Dap. That guy was awesome. I was really happy whenever that guy was on screen. That guy needs to be in more movies. I wish a Card would write a spin-off just for Sergeant Dap, because that guy who was the actor was awesome. And of course, I can't talk about this movie without talking about, I think it's either Asa. I don't want to say Asa. Haha. Asa. I've heard it pronounced both ways. I'm gonna say Asa Butterfield. This kid, I did not like him in Hugo, and I know that was like his big premiere. Did not like him at all in Hugo. I thought he was really miscast for that. And I thought his performance was okay overall in Ender's Game. There were moments when I thought, man, this guy just cannot do this kind of material. He cannot bring emotional heft. Excuse me. And also, there were moments where I did feel like he nailed it. And it was like, wow, you are bringing some emotion to this movie where the screenplay is lacking so badly. And he's okay, but under better direction. Actually, no, I take that back. I just think he's meh of an actor. Just eh. And Abigail, poor Abigail Breslin, she's just wasted as Valentine, where you can see she's really trying to make up where the script fails her, and it's just not happening. And she gives it her all. And of course, you got other people like Ben Kingsley, who has a really short role. He's okay. Viola Davis is pretty good as Major Anderson. That's really all I can say about the acting. And also, the way, and I don't want to give away anything, there's a huge moral situation at the end that I thought was handled really well. And people that have read Ender's Game know what I'm talking about. And it's the scene, it's the climax of the movie, and it's a big emotional dilemma for Ender. And I thought that part nailed it. It was so good. And I actually, for the first time in this movie, I felt something like, wow, there's some pretty heavy shit going on right now. And that's good. And I cared. And then it just went away again, right after that scene ended. And the last thing I'll say that was good about this movie, I like that they kept the stuff where Ender has the game with the mouse on his, monitor, because that looked like a badass fucking game. I want to play that game. Please, somebody, Sony, Microsoft, bring that game to next-gen consoles. I will buy that. Put that on PlayStation Store or Xbox Live Arcade. Put that on there. I will buy it. Because that game looks fucking awesome. And the way they portrayed that game in this movie was great. But, overall, just my positives really do not excuse the fact that I thought this movie was weak and boring and heartless and just such, I do not want to sit through this again. The part of a criteria of mine that I judge, I ask myself, would I ever want to watch this again? Would I ever want to see this for free? And my answer in case of Ender's Game is no. I would never want to sit through this again because I was just so uninterested in what was going on. It just makes me want to read the book again because that was just so much better. And I guess it's taken years for this movie, for this book to be made into a movie. And yeah, they should have taken a lot longer for this, and because this right here, it just feels so underwhelming and so underdeveloped. It felt like a trailer for a better, longer movie. So I cannot recommend Ender's Game. Even if you've read the book, just stick with the book. Because it's so much better. This movie doesn't do any justice to the book on a whole. And I cannot recommend Ender's Game. I'm sorry. Maybe if they're offering a rental, when it comes out on Redbox or Netflix or something, sure, for $1 or for free, that's fine if you want to see it. But don't pay $12.50 for this. Don't pay the IMAX price. It's not worth it just for the effects. It's really not, because the heart of the movie is severely lacking, and it was just boring, and I felt really hollow walking out of that theater. I felt more emotion in Bad Grandpa than I did watching Ender's Game. That is how lacking of a heart this movie is. So I can't recommend Ender's Game in all good conscience. I can't. I'm sorry. I know I'm going to get a lot of hate for this. I know fans of the book are going to scream their heads off at me. And if you go see it and you like it, great. I'm happy for you. I'm jealous, actually, but I just can't. The thought of sitting through this again, I don't want to do it. I just did not give a shit. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you like what you see, subscribe. November will be an interesting month for me because I don't know what's going on. And happy belated Halloween as well. See what I can do as far as videos go, because I don't know what I'm going to be doing in November. Anyway, thank you for watching. This is Razorblade Mango signing off.